Blackbirds singing in the dead of night. We'll take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to arise. Well, blackbirds singing in the dead of night. We'll take these sunken eyes and learn to see. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to be free. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly, into the light of the dark black night. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly, into the light of the dark black night. Blackbirds singing in the dead of night. We'll take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to arise. Well, you were only waiting for this moment to rise. Well, you were only waiting for this moment to rise.
In 2017, I went to a children's home in Uganda for 3 months where I volunteered as a filmmaker and photographer. I was just a teenager and was working at this place called Rafiki Africa Ministries, and I realised that I was completely out of my depth. It was the first time I'd seen poverty firsthand, and I got to live with them and to experience what it was like to live in a completely different world to what we experience here in Perth, Australia. I was so moved by the experience I had in Uganda that I knew that I had to bring these stories back here to Perth and to share them.
Dreaming of a future where there's hope for all kids, dreaming of a future where every child has a home, a future where every child knows that they're precious, and a future where voices are heard.
These stories, I ended up showing them to a camera retailer in Brisbane called Camera Pro, and they agreed to fund a trip for me to go back to East Africa to tell more stories. And I knew for this trip I wanted an extra pair of hands to help me on this journey, and that's where David comes into the story.
So one time Marcus kind of jokingly said, "Oh, maybe you should come to Africa with me," and I kind of laughed it off. And then a couple of days later he actually asked me, he was like, "Do you want to come to Africa with me?" And I thought about it, and I was like, yes I do. And then, I mean, I'd never been to Africa before, and I'd never experienced that culture, so I just decided I wasn't going to think about it too much, just go into it and just take it as it comes. My role on the trip was sound designer and composer for the films.
We went with the goal of creating 4 documentaries, one on children, education, agriculture and women. This took us on a 2-month journey through Uganda and Ethiopia, and to start it took us back to the children's home I first went to called Rafiki Africa Ministries, where we got to tell the story of a small children's home.
My name is Doreen Tiwaingana. It's my honor that I serve with the kids, making sure they have eaten food, they are dressed, they have bathed, they are fine, they have taken their nap, they are playing without any hindrance. We learn from the kids and they learn from us.
My name is Sarah. For so long I've been working as a child care worker, stroke preschool teacher, helping those with homeschooling. And then what Rafiki does, it provides hope and love to the children of Uganda.
The children who have at Rafiki have different stories and different backgrounds. Most of them, they have been abandoned by their parents or either relatives, because there are very many reasons why families break up and children get up to be abandoned. Other people didn't go to school, they're illiterate, they didn't get education. So what is the next thing to do for them? It's just ending up getting married, especially little girls. So when they get married, what happens? They give birth to children.
So these women, sometimes they drop out of school and they have no hope. They are being sent away from their families. So they are so desperate, and then they do not have any way out to see that they can make endings meet. So what these poor girls do, they decide to abandon their kids by the roadside. Even some are put in pit latrines because of poverty.
Some of them, the police has called Rafiki to come and rescue these children. The social workers go to the field, the background from where those kids were got from. They do assessment, they get information from the neighborhood. When you find a relative or a mother or someone, of course there's a reason why they have abandoned these children. So what we do, the child will start to bond slowly with the parent. The child will be going there for short visits to the home. The assessment helps the kids to bond very well and giving parents time so that they don't abandon the kids the next time. They get attached to their families. So that's when they are settled back home with their families happily. I would love to see these kids growing up, to see them being responsible citizens of Uganda in the next generation.
I think they would cause some change. They might bring some solutions to all these problems, the corruption, the what. Give them the education support they need. It will help a lot.
My dream for Uganda, I want to see Uganda growing from where it is to where it is going. And Uganda will be a better place for people to be.
In 2018, I raised funds for Rafiki Africa Ministries by sharing these stories in Australia, and some of the funds were put towards playground equipment at Rafiki.
You excited?
After our time at Rafiki and in the capital, Kampala, we moved east and we moved rural to a place called Buwoya, a small little fishing village.
So rural life in Buwoya is a whole lot different. Though you're getting water from the well and from rain tanks. There's limited power, very little reception, if any. It's literally just a small town in the bush, basically. We spent a week in Buwoya, and this is the short documentary we filmed.
Erinnya lyange mpitibwa Yusufu. ono mukwano gwange Waswa. Nsomera Bwoya Mission School. Soma kibiina kyakuna.
My name is Moses, and I'm the director of Bwoya Mission School. It's a school that helps poor kids from poor communities to have education because they can't afford to go to good schools. Mathematics, English, they learn how to read, they learn how to socialize with others. I totally grew up in a very poor community whereby rich families, they take their kids to school and poor families, they don't.
My name's Sarah Tibamwenda Adieri. I am a headmistress of Bwoya Mission Primary School. It is my son Moses Kiaga who gave a suggestion that we should start this school. We started collecting poles from our forest. We made about 3 classrooms.
This may not be the best education, but it is something rather than nothing. We want to avoid illiteracy and unemployment in the next generation because education helps to open the children's minds. It will help Uganda to be a strong country.
Some of them were orphans. Some of them had only a mother. Most of the parents in this area are illiterate. They have a low attitude about education. They don't bother even buying books for the children. For Yusuf and Waswa, their father abandoned them. He left them in a house and went and got other wives. They were just seated at home, so I never wanted them to stay at home. They are in this school. I am the one looking after them presently. I'm trying to help them, at least to buy them books and pencils. That is the story of Yusufu and Waswa.
Njiga nsobole okukula. Njiga okubeera w'omugaso. Njiga nsobole okubeera n'eddoboozi. Njiga eby'omu maaso ebijja. Okuyiga kusanyusa. Okuyiga kumpa okusalawo okulungi. Okuyiga kitegeeza nti nsobola okuyamba abalala. Okuyiga kugulawo enjiri.
After our time at Bwoya Mission School, we had got the opportunity to visit one more small organisation for a day. The organisation was called Elizabeth House, which is a home that takes care for children who have disabilities.
We didn't plan on recording anything for Elizabeth House, but once we were there and we met the children, we used the day to shoot what we could to tell their story.
Basically, Elizabeth House is a day center for children and youth with disabilities. So basically what we do is to keep the children here, give them a start on life skills.
Elizabeth House has been running for 20 years. At Elizabeth House, there are 30 kids, 10 kids in each house. Yeah, some of them, the parents bring them. The others, they just pick them from the streets.
They learn by playing. We don't follow a normal school curriculum.
And then others love to sing, dance. They love visitors. So joyful to be with.
find the story of Elizabeth House and the children with disabilities who they take care of deeply moving. I think the reason why I find it so moving is because of how much joy, laughter and smiles I saw in that place, despite how much life had stacked against them. These kids faced the hardest life circumstances possible, born into poverty, with a disability, and abandoned by parents. In Uganda, it's often believed that disabilities are a curse to a family or a result of some wrongdoing of the parents, which often leads to these kids being abandoned. But Elizabeth House was birthed from the belief that that wasn't okay, and that this world we live in is broken, and it's up to us to do something about it. And when we look at the world around us, we see that so many things are not okay, and even worse. It shows us that there's something within us that's not okay. There are people all across the world who face immense suffering. And when we hear these stories, we all respond in different ways, with either apathy or with action. The apathy comes from the belief that there is nothing we can do about it, so why try? Or we're so far removed from the problems of the people in Uganda, what can we do? Well, this problem's so big, how can we do anything to make a change? But I believe that these stories of Elizabeth House and Bawoya Mission School and Rafiki, they should move us. When we see something wrong with the world, part of us should be angry at the injustice we see in the world. I believe that when we see past the noise of all that we've chosen to surround ourselves in, and we find the faces of the people who can become just another number in statistics, we can be moved to action. What I saw in East Africa was a need for the stories and the struggles of people to be heard here in Australia. And it's a privilege to have your attention for a whole night on a topic like this. Usually all that organisations get is just 30-second adverts to grab your attention or just quick interactions with tin shakers. So it's a rare occasion that we get to have this time together to go on a journey. When I picked up a camera, I never imagined doing this kind of work. The power of photographs and films is the ability for it to make you slow down and to look into the faces and eyes of other people and be reminded of something common. When I first started shooting humanitarian stories, I had this insecurity within me that these stories were not stories of breaking news stories. These stories aren't stories of epidemics or refugee crises, and I thought that because they weren't breaking news stories, that they'd be forgotten quickly. But I think there's a beauty in the fact that these stories aren't the breaking news stories, but they're a glimpse into ordinary people's everyday lives. And that makes them no less important than the breaking news stories. The stories of the people you hear tonight are not struggling to survive or fighting for their lives, but they're in an extremely vulnerable position. An injury or a loss of job or sickness, a drought can quickly put them in a position where they are fighting for their lives. They aren't breaking news stories, but these people still deserve to have their stories told. This is a free event tonight because I didn't want there to be any reason stopping anyone to coming to hear these stories. I hope that you can walk away from this event being more inspired to see and to apprehend the preciousness of every person. But as well as being inspired, this event is also a way that we can raise funds to help two NGOs tonight, two NGOs in Ethiopia, which we'll be showcasing next. And we have several ways through which you can raise funds with us tonight. So in the foyer, we're selling framed photographs, which you've had a look at. You can purchase one for $200. There's only one print of each photo, but if there's a photo you really like that's already been sold, you can pre-order it and pay for it tonight, and we can get it delivered to you. And there's order forms through which you can do that. We're also selling photo books for $50, which include some of the stories and photographs I shot in Uganda and Ethiopia during the production of these documentaries. You can have a look through in the foyer and purchase one. And lastly, we designed a t-shirt for tonight's event because I think there's a lot of power in a t-shirt to start a conversation. The t-shirt was designed by Anka Nineveh, and it's based on one of the portraits I shot in Ethiopia. And it's a portrait of a young girl's face. And this girl and her family lived on the border of Ethiopia and Eritrea. And this place was a war zone for the last 20 years, meaning that this people group, this family, were completely inaccessible. And David and I met this group of nomads in Ethiopia who were receiving education and learning to become literate from this Australian nurse called Valerie Browning. And what struck me was that in the noise of all the reporting and statistics behind the war, behind all of that was just one girl. And she had a story and a face that I had never heard before. Within all of this was the face of one person and a common humanity. And the message we have tonight is that we aren't that different. And that t-shirt design is a conversation starter with people when they ask you where you got it from. So you get one of those t-shirts for $40 in the foyer. If you don't want to purchase anything, you can also just donate through cash or direct transfer outside in the table in the foyer. And all the funds we raise tonight are going to 2 NGOs in Ethiopia, which we're going to show you. So one of them will be providing clean water to remote communities in Ethiopia, and the other one will be working to end female genital mutilation in a rural Ethiopian community. Another way you can help me out with this kind of work is getting in contact with me if you know of any opportunities where I can share this message and these stories more widely. I speak at high schools and churches and community groups and would love to share this more. So if you know of any places where I could share this further, please get in contact. Secondly, if you know of any NGOs or you work for any NGOs who could do with some media work, I would love to get in contact with you and see if there's a possibility of doing any stuff with you. And thirdly, if you know of any grants that get put towards media and humanitarian work, please let me know. All of this work that we do in Africa, going to tell these stories and bring them back here, they're all funded either by grants or out of our own pockets, so it's expensive work, but as long as these stories are helping people and resonating with people here in Australia, we're going to keep making them. Tonight is not just the work of David Chidsey and I. We have a lot of people who we need to thank for tonight, for firstly allowing us to go on this trip, and secondly to hold this event tonight. We want to thank Camera Pro, who is an Australian camera retailer who gave us a grant to be able to go and do this kind of work. And they also contributed $3,000 to the organisations we worked with. So it's because of them we could go and do and tell these stories which you're seeing tonight. Secondly, I want to thank Mount Pleasant Baptist Church, who allowed us to host the event here, and they allowed us to host it for free. And it's usually incredibly expensive to get a venue that can hold this many people with a sound system and screens to present this work. So the support of this church means that more funds can go towards the organisations in Ethiopia. I also want to thank the amazing musicians who've been killing it tonight, who are volunteering their time to make this experience for you. Music has this amazing ability to create this space of reflection, to become a companion whilst you're processing emotions. And whilst you absorb these films and messages, we want to create these beautiful musical interludes where you get to feel and live in that space for a time being. So I want to thank Lani Melrose, Mia Matheson, James Mack for singing, and then the band Chidsey, so Jet Harris on guitar, Austin Salisbury, who'll be playing keys, and Alex Barker for drumming, who you'll hear later. This band is seriously a world-class band of Whopper graduates who I'm extremely grateful for, and I'm sure you are too. We have so many friends who helped out tonight in ushering and helping to sell fundraising items. I want to thank Tom Handeside, who's been doing all the sound and vision for this, Unka and my mum for doing the amazing grazing table outside. I want to thank our families, the Wongs and the Chidseys, for allowing us to follow our dreams and praying that we didn't die along the way. My parents helped putting so much of tonight on. I'm terrible at events and logistics, and they saved my neck so many times in preparing for this. I also want to thank David Chidsey over on the piano, who composed the amazing music you're listening to tonight. During our time abroad, he became my best friend and my only friend during our time in Uganda and Ethiopia. And became just the best travel partner for the past 2 months. Lastly, I want to thank all of you here tonight for coming along to hear these stories. They can be uncomfortable and challenging to our worldview, but I think we need to be challenged from time to time. We were placing bets on when you would cry. I'm grateful that you're here to support the work of NGOs and also to support the work of local artists like David and I. As I said, these stories, as long as these stories resonate with people and they're helping people, we're going to keep making them. So thank you to all of you who brought along friends and family tonight to spread this message even wider. Something I've been keeping a little bit secret is that this exhibition is the second exhibition I've done, Echo, and I've put on one previously called Voices Unheard, which was last year. But I've also secretly been working on a third exhibition, which I'm excited to announce will be sometime next year. So if you want to keep in the loop for that, you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram, or sign up to my mailing list on my website, and you can find that all on the little cards, the free prints that you got coming in tonight. I've talked for long enough now. Now we move on to part 2 of this journey, and we're moving north from Uganda and up to Ethiopia. So the documentaries we made in Uganda were on children and education, and for Ethiopia we're covering the topics of agriculture and women. In Ethiopia we moved to a small district called Wichale, where we were looking at the issue of water for remote communities. So without any delay, here are the films that we shot in Ethiopia.
Bishaan hiyootidha. Nafsee kanaan tokko jecha bishaan malee jiraachuu hin danda'u namni kamiyyuu. Bishaan sun immoo bishaan qulqulluu ta'uu qaba. Bishaan duraan dhugaa jirru garaa keenya kan nu dhukkubsaa ture.
Jireenyi keenya kuffaan qotiisa qonnaan bullaa qotee bulaadha gama gandi kun akkabaabiin hunduu qotii irratti immoo daganaa horii horsiifneet horiidhaanis fayyadamna hoolotas horii dhaltii akka horii qonnaan bulla nuuroon keenya qotiisaa fi horii horsiisanii horiidhaan bulu isaaniif fayyadamne jechuudha.
Garaa kaasaa itti godhee daa'imni illee yeroo yeroodhaan dhukkubsatti mana akimii deddeebi'aa turreeyyu gizee duraanii keessa amma garuu amma wayya duraan namni guddaan illee garaasaa gatteechisa daa'ima olee hoqqisiisa.
Waraabessa wajjiniin burqaa bakka bisaanii bu'uu qabna. Taraa eegganneetu achitti immoo bakka hirriba dhabneetu daa'imtis wanni ergannus hin jiru warra gurguddaatti hirriba dhabee waraabbataa baay'ee rakkoon nu baddaa gahaa ture. Har'a immoo bakka galata keessanaa ta'u bishaan indalibbii waraabbannaa halkan ka'uun hin jiru gizee faqqanne waraabbannee akka faqqanneetti itti fayyadamnaa jirra. Amma sun armaan gizee dhiyoo keessa nu baasee bishaan nutsuu bishaan qulqulluu dhugaa jirra. Kan duraan qoshaashaa achi waraabbachaa turre raammoo wajjin.
Starting from 2011, Sunarma did 114 dug wells for around 20,000 community beneficiaries. Taraan dura gizee burqaa bisaanii dhumusanii dhibee adda addaatiin bisaan kanarraa qubnaanuu qabnamaa ture. Daa'imti keenyas ittiin bisaan kanarraa onnee itti baay'ee dhukkubsachaa turte. Har'a erga bisaan qulqulluu kana arganne uumamtuu dhibamne daa'ima keenya irras hin gahu nurras hin gahu hundi keenyaa fayyaa arganne bisaan qulqulluu fayyadamaa irraa uumaa rakkoon tokko nurra hin jiru. Even though Sunarma did this hand dug wells for community, still there is a gap, there is a problem, there is a need of pure and potable water.
Dhugumaa sirriitti amma qulqullina dambiidhaan yeroo yeroodhaan ji'a jaatti qorichatti godhannaa bishaan keenya kan katamaadha hawwaa turre bishaan amboo saniin tokko jechaadha. Bishaan isaa kun baxaamitti shaggaa isaati sirriitti shaggaadha. Burqaa tulluu jedhamti. Burqaa tulluutuun bishaan ishii sirriitti nutsuudha qulqulluudha. Egaa boombaan kun itti nu godhame daa'imni keenya fayyaa ta'e fayyaa taane baasii duraan baafnu sanirraa illee nu deebiseera. Dhaabbileen Sunarmaa kun egaa bishaan kana nu dhaabe jechuudha.
The final part of our exploration of life in East Africa was a focus on women.
I had heard about this issue that remote communities in Ethiopia were facing, and that was the issue of female genital mutilation. Through this issue, I heard about this lady called Valerie Browning, and she was an Australian nurse who's just committed her life to living with and serving the Afar people. I read her book called Malika, and she quickly became a hero of mine, and now we were on our way to go and interview her.
To interview Valerie, we had to travel to the Afar region, which is one of the hottest inhabitable deserts on Earth, sometimes hitting 50 degrees Celsius. We initially went to the Afar region to interview Valerie to hear about stories of female genital mutilation, but Valerie brought to our attention a whole other issue that was much more pressing for the Afar people, a story of their struggle against cultural extinction. This is the story of our time with Valerie and the Afar people.
I was in a place called Yallo in Afar in 1973. My life totally changed because as a nurse, I saw people starve to death. I didn't know that could possibly happen. I had no imagination about that when I was living in Sydney. One mother brought me the baby in the early morning, that baby died. The child in the midday, that child died, and the child at sunset died. 3 children from one family, from one mother, dying of malnutrition. I just could not take the idea of this amazing amount of injustice. I came back and came back and came back to the Horn of Africa, eventually married when I was 39 years old. I married my husband, who's an Afar. Now I've lived here 30 years and I couldn't find a better life if I looked for one, I don't think. My name is Valerie Browning, but as the Afar know me, Malika, and I'm their program coordinator. The Afar, by history and by their environment and by everything that you can, makes them up, they're pastoralists. A pastoralist is a person whose livelihood is dependent on his herd, moving place to place for water and for grazing. Afar are actually, to my mind, having lived with them for 30 years, ecologists. They love their environment backwards. They know every tree, every grass, every rock, everything about their environment. They want to preserve it. And they have rules and regulations in their tradition to do that. And that's really why they do move, so that at any one time they don't destroy the environment of the trees, the grass, the whatever's around. They move on to let it rejuvenate. Challenges in Afar are huge. Climate change is as obvious as breathing here. It's really, really here. Temperatures are higher, rain seasons have gone from 4 a year down to 2. Rain seasons are much more violent. A lot of people die of lightning strike. It's a lot different than when I came. I've been here 30 years. When I came, they had so much milk from their animals that they were able to literally play with it. Today, maybe 6 months of the year, children, mothers, everybody are not drinking milk. And so we've gone from being very well off to being a community who are living in malnutrition, threatened by thirst, threatened by the herd loss itself, and not being able to get into the market. So that opens the whole thing of their challenges. Very few Afar drink protected water. So diseases spread easily. Vaccination, you need to take a mobile cold chain, you need to take a refrigerator with a generator, as we've just done 2 days ago to 2 districts, to keep the ice going so you can go house to house vaccinating children, otherwise they're dying of measles, dying of whooping cough. Heaps and heaps of challenges. Illiteracy is the greatest. I mean, if you're illiterate, then you're stuck with your brain in some form of metal box, and you can't do any form of different thinking other than what was known before. That's what illiteracy is all about. It's quite strange. But once you become literate, then you bounce with energy till you could kill the world. You want to change everything. With the changes of society as fast as they are today, Afar are losing out. The Afar region, although it's one of the hottest inhabited places on earth, so they say, it is full of mineral resource, it's full of many resources, including geothermal resources. But as soon as it's possible, people other than Afar come rushing to take that resource. So Afar are really still the people missing out in their own land. It's a strange land. It's a land with people, nomadic people, who move 5-6 times a year, but somehow the rest of Ethiopia says it's empty, and they don't take in notice of the people. Before they could catch up, their resources were taken from them and used for other things, other people. As Ethiopia has done what the previous Prime Minister Meles Zenawi said, industrialised and moved on, Afar haven't. There is nothing here that puts the main livelihood of the people, the livestock, into focus. Abdar came into a world of challenges. We were 34 Afar, and we eventually were the beginning of Abdar. We were voluntary. We came into a community of pastoralists who'd never learned to read and write before, never had education, never had health, and were not connected to the cash market. We work where the government doesn't work. So all over Afar, in the far rural areas, they know our organisation, and we are trying to see that the people get what should be their basic human rights. That's what we'd like to see. Abdar started the literacy of the Afar and started a system of mobile education so the pastoralist children could go to the first level of school, and then we try to feed them into the government school. And then when you come to health, well, you've got the mother trying to have a baby with nothing except for a cutting knife, a traditional cutting knife, to open up her female genital mutilation scar. So there you are, poor mother, she lives and dies with no knowledge, no nothing, no connection, no referral, no nothing. 100% of the women have FGM, they've had it. So they know the danger, they know the pain, they know the difficulties. So now they're going to help women who are pregnant, women who are going to have children, women, young girls, and help them to understand why it is so important to demand from their families that FGM doesn't happen, and if they've got it, how to get treatment, how to get released from all the problems, particularly the urinary problems of FGM. Basically, FGM is done by the Afar because they think they're protecting the woman from being touched by another man other than a husband. They think that they're keeping her pure. But the sad thing is, the awful thing is, by doing the FGM, they've made the vagina opening so tiny. It's like you could only put a straw through. And so if she was in her married life unable to be penetrated, then she gives birth with this. She has to be cut. There has to be a woman with a knife around. I know of a woman in Shifra, for example. She went into childbirth when all the family had gone to the market. All was left in the house was 3-4-year-olds, little children running around. She yelled at the children and said, please, please help me, take the knife, cut me. And her stomach is so huge with the pregnancy, she can't get down below. That woman actually died trying to get the baby out. The baby died inside. And this, if you tell that to the Afa and explain it to the Afa, and anyway they hear the news of what happened to that woman, that means they will change. They will. But this is the tragedy of FGM. FGM is literally what it says, a mutilation of the body. But it's a 3,000-year-old culture. So it won't change in a day, it won't change in a moment, but it will change in time. And when people have got health services, when people are literate, when people are able to understand that, you know, there is a way of the female being kept pure without this mutilation. We have a special assistance from Ethiopia Aid Australia who have allowed us to get right inside the whole problem, to understand where the actual perpetrators or the practitioners are of this FGM, what to do with these practitioners. And Ethiopia Aid have also helped us with getting right beside the religious leader so he can really understand what Islam says about this. Islam says not to do it. Islam is against FGM, but they hide behind the curtain of belief in Islam and say, oh, God wants you to be pure, therefore you must have it. Well, that is not the case. So what we found in the enormous support of Ethiopia Aid Australia is that we are getting deeper and deeper into the problem. I have great confidence it will stop. It'll take more time. We need to be more holistic in our approach. We're using the youth, we're using the young girls, we're going into schools, we're going into every aspect of their lives to talk about this. I met here in this town a girl who was married at the age of 13. She had a first child at the age of 14 probably. She's now about 17 with a 3-year-old girl. And poor girl, her future's been wrecked by this really, because she's never been to school. And she probably will never go to school. I asked her what sort of age husband she's got. She said, oh, she gave me an idea that he might be 15 to 20 years older than her. Well, yeah, this is to keep the clan together. This is to keep the name of the clan going. But in the end, girls and women are going to have their rights here, but they're going to have it in a disciplined system. The hardest practice to give up, I think, is that of the way they marry the girl without her choice. And that is really damaging. That will change, it'll change with education, but they must have holistic education, sound education for everybody, and then it can change well. If we go the way we're going and just depend on donors for short-term projects and they go bang, 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 we will make no changes because the community not like that. They need sustainable development. They need long-term support to literacy, to change, to develop their own health teams and so on. And actually utilise the resources of their land, become part of the market, etc., etc., retaining the culture and the traditions they have. Abda's at a crossroad of changing strategy to make greater sustainability, to build up community resilience and capacity to manage their own affairs, really manage their own affairs. That has to really happen in a big way. We can't just be in-out people at all. Most NGOs are in-out, most. And this cannot go on. It cannot go on. What we're talking about is community development. If we are really committed to community development, then we're committed to them developing to the stage they need to, getting all basic human rights. And I wonder how much of that commitment there is in the world. I wonder. the Afar has moved my brain out of what the West is in. The West is trapped by its own capitalism. Trapped. You have to have more. You've got to advertise down the, you can't pick up your phone without seeing an advertisement. Horrible. You can't sit in a train without seeing an advertisement. So Afar know another side of life. I've never in 30 years treated an Afar for depression. Never. How is that? They look after each other. We have this enormous community kind of family idea. I mean, I feel like I am the top privileged Australian that there is.
Like I said, Valerie Browning, who we just heard from, is one of my heroes. And there's something about her story which is very challenging. I think it's challenging because it goes against everything we believe to be the meaning and purpose of our lives, essentially. Her story says that there is more to life than the Australian dream of comfort. We've created this dream of comfort, but we've forgotten the blessing of contentment. See, money is a great thing. It really is. It opens doors, it provides opportunities, it can bring happiness and support NGOs. But what money can't buy is contentment. Contentment is to be satisfied. But what I see is Australians getting richer, unhappier, more stressed, less satisfied, and less content. As Valerie said, she feels like she is the most privileged Australian. And I believe that's because money isn't her mission. The betterment of others is, and that's why she's content in her mission. The reason why we decided to call this exhibition Echo is because during our time abroad, we realised that we are in our own protected bubble and echo chamber of the Australian dream, and we don't even realise it. When you look around and you see people driving similar cars to you, when they dress the same way, when they earn a similar salary, and they work towards the same dream of comfort, we begin to think that's normal. We begin to think that we are the standard definition of normal. We are in our own echo chamber and we don't even realise it. We are not an average majority. We are a very rich minority. And our echo chamber has told us to believe that the rich are always richer than us. Who is rich? Well, we think it's probably someone with $20,000 more, earning $20,000 more a year than us, which is just not true. We are the rich ones in the world. It's like we've won the lottery every single day, and we don't even realise it. What if we could look outside our own echo chamber? How would we see the world, and how would we view other people? Maybe then strangers and enemies would become brothers and sisters. Of all the stories we've seen tonight, what would you do if the people in them were people you dearly loved? The water those communities were drinking, what if that were your spouse? What if the only school you could afford to send your kids to had a tin roof, no doors and a dirt floor? I'd tell everyone I knew that there was some injustice towards my loved one, and I wouldn't sleep until they were given the dignity that they deserve. So can we love our neighbours as ourselves, despite how far away they are? So the backbone of doing good towards others stems on whether or not we can love people who are different from us. Can we look through the noise and echo of our own lives and see the faces in between? There was one song that stayed with me during our time in Uganda, and it was the kind of song that becomes like a companion to you in your time there. And we're going to finish tonight with that song. And the story behind that song is one that really resonates with the whole message tonight. The story goes that one afternoon there were two men who went for a walk, and on their way on this walk, they met this young girl who was maybe 8 years old. And this girl was carrying a younger boy who was crippled in his legs, and he had difficulty walking. Yet as she was carrying him, he seemed to be almost the same size as her. And as the two men going along the path got up to her, they asked her, "Isn't he heavy? Isn't this boy heavy?" And her reply to their question is the name of the song that we're going to end with. And her answer to their question was, "He ain't heavy, he's my brother."
myself as my own. No burden is he to let. To bear. For I know he will not encumber me. Laden at I'm laden with sadness that every heart will come to bear. Of love for one another, and the Lord doesn't weigh that much to me. Say he ain't heavy, no, he ain't heavy. Say he's my brother. Ooh, see, he ain't heavy. Oh, no, he's my brother.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Thank you so much for loving us and supporting our dream. Please go and support us and support the organisations out in the foyer. Thank you so much for your time tonight. We love you all.